My name is Xoli Norman. I'm a theatre practitioner here in the Basitsana scriptwriting and directing workshop in film making and directing. My interest is in how to use black motifs in my sharing and teaching about writing. Because in established institutions, which have, by virtue of the bulk of the books that are in the library, you find Western examples. So we want to use what's familiar to the black child, the motifs, the examples, and there's something different that happens when a black child is being taught by black people who share the same background. My writing took a different level when Xoli came, after apartheid, came back into the country and taught me how to write. I could tell there's a difference when you're being taught by a black person. There's a way that black tuition, the agency of tutoring, when you share the same background referencing system with the tutor, that makes a difference. It turns the coldness of the classroom into something that can be used progressively. Because also, whilst English is an enabling tool, it also branches off to serve the silent violence of colonial tools that we use for subjugation. So language was key and central to the subjugation of colonized people. But in Anglophone countries, you see how imperialism still persists and pervades all forms of pedagogy and education. In that, when a black child is manipulated to leave their language outside of the classroom, that's when language performs silent violence. And that's dangerous because it can do that in post-colonial, post-apartheid, post-imperial settings. Because what it does then, it goes undetected. You see? So then colonialism, apartheid, can pervade progressive spaces through language. Yeah, we look at classics, and normally classics would be your classical literature in the Western sense of the term. Is you're looking at Shakespeare, the body of work, canons from the West. But now, when we do masterclass, writing masterclasses, we look at Celan and Eugene, Snanapo, the complexity of those narratives, how the human agency in the story of Snanapo is the dog, that reacts every time it sees the murderers of its owner, and it goes Snanapo, Snanapo, Pamulani, Snanapo, Pampale Sapo, Snanapo, Barekege, Snanapo, Karena Haki, Snanapo, Mungaka, Snanapo, like I don't eat my own. It's the same technique that's been used in Animal Farm when human agency is being transferred, and therefore creating distance, between the themes that are being explored and the reader. See? And so it becomes imperative to look at the similarities, but because Nanako would be a necessary line for the black child, so you are more accessible in terms of the motifs and the examples and the canons, that would normally not feature if you were taught by someone who doesn't share the same cultural background with you. So it becomes important then to exploit when we have access to pedagogical spaces, when we push pedagogy, that we acknowledge, the forces that constructed us, and we we, 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 we elevate them, we retrieve them from the background and we foreground them. So, so it is important then to exploit when we have access to pedagogical spaces, when we acknowledge, the forces that constructed us, and we elevate them, we retrieve them from the background and we foreground them. We look at them as narratives, as a scientific way of looking at narratives. So that when you understand story as a scientific animal, from a scientific point of view, you don't need to get stoned to be in the zone to write. You have scientific tools that you can use. You have access to African classics, that you can use to articulate your story, a contemporary story, using time-tested techniques in the classics. They're classics because they've endured time, So then there's something about them that we should study scientifically, so that we can freshment what's been used in these classics to access the contemporary mind. Jung speaks of archetypes, and it's that part of the psyche where myths, symbolism, and science reside. So it speaks of the collective pool. So when your audience is black people and you draw from the cultural pool of black classics, so already you're doing two things. You're retrieving, redeeming the lost treasure in narrative. See, but also you're accessing a pool that has latent canons that are shared by the writer and the target audience. Tapping into the female energy in terms of which contrasts the trajectory of the world history that was determined by patriarchy, which in my view was male energy, manifesting in wars, manifesting in greed, manifesting, and there's an argument which is something to contend with, that would we have had at the First World War, the Second World War, colonialism, had we given females, lead in world affairs. See, and that's important because in white perspectives of the world, and the way the white male voice articulates the world, the black man and the white woman occupy the same rank. So they are being framed as background to the white male voice, and that's very key, because what this does then, it takes things that are superficial, things that are man-made, things that are normative, and it performs them as nomological. Nomological here means things that are natural, like the sun rises from the west to the east. So the translation, the transmutation of normative into nomological phenomena has to do with the things that are still being practiced today. You look at the universities in the world, how they are governed by literature that comes from the north. And geographically, you look at Europe in terms of the world, in terms of South America, in terms of Asia, in terms of Africa, and you compare that part of the north which churns out literature and how we see the world. So it becomes important to have motifs that are black when teaching the black child, because sometimes when we think we are educated, is that we have mastered how the white man sees the world. And that is problematic. And that doesn't mean that you take everything that the white voice has articulated and throwing it out. It means that you use it consciously, because there's an issue of positionality. There's an issue of enunciation. We enunciate, we articulate from certain positions in the world. Whatever I say from a particular geography, from a new democracy, from Africa. So the voice is framed by history into certain specific zones in the world. So we enunciate from specific positions, struggles, literary struggles, social struggles that have to come through our voice. So that's what it is measured. But the admixture of the techniques of writing coming from Aristotle, from the Greeks, 4th century BC up to today, we have to look at all that, but find our position in all that, that we are not subsumed, in the Western voice, that we use these tools to articulate ourselves and to reposition ourselves, back into in the spectrum of global developments of narrative. As talent here, for me, the most fulfilling thing was when someone said I'm rich from this information that I've gathered here, from directing, from film, from my class, that the participant says, I feel I'm rich. I have all the tools I need to sustain myself as a writer. For me, that's a breakthrough. These participants, these kids, are better placed. They have opportunities that I didn't have when I was their age. I didn't have access to this level of tuition. You have Dos Mulele teaching directing. I mean, he's a young voice. He's very relevant. And it's something to contend with. You have Bultsogo, who's got who's in Xhosa they say mdegendonga. That means someone who's short in stature, but when they strike beyond, they punch beyond their weight. And you have Vosi. Vosi is an award-winning filmmaker. So these forces that are in the same space, they are institutions by themselves. And for the black child to be exposed to that, that's something amazing. Because you are beyond geography, politics of geography. The kids don't have to go to a building. Information comes to them. Alan Quayle used to say, the township is a ship that never gets to town. So let's get off the ship and go to town. You see, but these kids are beyond those politics. Mandela's politics and Martin Luther's politics were about equality, to have the same thing that's in town, in the township. But today, the politics of geography have been radically shifted. When Tupac came into the picture and started taking out what delayed the black message in jazz, because jazz had a lot of harmony, and Tupac quietened all these harmony instruments, and for the first time, the black voice was given primacy, so you can hear the angst, the anger in the black voice. And he did not only do that, redeem sound and the black message in sound that had harmony, which sweetened the anger. So you could hear the drum beat, which was quoting the middle passage on the Atlantic, because that's what the black voice had. It had the drum and the voice. So Tupac redeems that in his music. Hence, for the first time, the world can hear what the black man has to say. And that helped jazz from its trappings of harmony, of Western harmony. But not only that, because geographies are policed by colonialism and imperialism, he created a third space, the sonic country, where angry sermons about the effects, the adverse effects of imperialism could be the subject of preaching. And then the present governments need to develop sophistication to be able to police that space. No one can police that space. Hence, the internet is problematic in terms of policing. But it's where the sermons of this generation, the angry sermons, are located. They are not in any place, any geography, which you can monitor and police. So they are beyond policing. See, and that in itself is radical. When we can, in our writing, find forms that are radical, just as form, before even activating them and animating them, then we are onto a revolution. Joe Scott said, this revolution will not be televised. That's what he meant.